The conference room felt suddenly airless as I stood frozen in the doorway. My sustainability presentation, the one I'd built from nothing, researched for months and perfected down to the pixel, was displayed on the massive screen. But it was Lucas Blake's name on the title slide where mine should have been. "What are you doing?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Lucas turned to me with that practiced smile that had charmed his way into a corner office despite having 2 years less experience than me. At 42, he possessed the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of doors swinging open at his approach. "Just running through the presentation for the board meeting. Patrick wants everything perfect for the Westlake account." He gestured casually toward the screen as if we were discussing the weather, not the theft of my work. "That's my presentation," I said, stepping fully into the room. "I've been working on it for 3 months. I'm scheduled to present it today." He laughed, actually laughed, and straightened his Italian silk tie. "You didn't submit it through the proper channel, Danielle. I had to polish it up for you. You know how messy your slides were." My slides weren't messy. They were meticulous, as was everything I did. "And now," he continued, gathering his notes, "the board wants me to present it. They trust me. You're just background." The dismissive wave of his hand burned more than a slap would have. "You can't do this," I said, my voice still remarkably even despite the earthquake happening inside me. "This is my work, my research, my concept, from start to finish." Lucas closed his laptop with a definitive snap. "It's company property, and I'm your superior. I'm doing you a favor, really. You're not ready for this level of exposure. 8 years. 8 years of late nights, of being the first to arrive and the last to leave. 8 years of watching men with half my talent sail past me into leadership roles. And now this man who couldn't even build a basic Excel model without assistance was taking credit for my most innovative work. Mr. Caldwell will want to know where this came from," I said, referring to our CEO. Lucas stepped closer, his cologne overwhelming in the confined space. "Danielle, let's be clear. Patrick Caldwell doesn't know your name. To him, you're just another analyst who generates paperwork. I've been golfing with him twice this month. Who do you think he'll believe?" He was right, and we both knew it. In the corporate hierarchy, proximity to power often mattered more than actual contribution. "Now," he said, checking his Rolex, "I need to finalize my notes. The team will be arriving soon, and I don't want any awkwardness." He emphasized the last word as if my justified anger would be the inappropriate element in this scenario. As he brushed past me toward the door, he paused. "You can sit in on the presentation if you'd like. Take notes. See how it's done properly." The door closed behind him, and I stood alone in the room, staring at my slides with his name emblazoned across them. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a text from 3 months ago. A warning. From my friend Desmond Hart, the only genuine ally I had at Helix. "Lucas plays dirty, Danny. If you don't protect your work, he'll take it." I hadn't listened. I hadn't thought I needed to. In my naivety, I believed good work would speak for itself. I sank into one of the plush leather chairs surrounding the conference table. The room spun slightly as the full weight of what was happening settled on me. This wasn't just about a presentation. This was about my future at Helix. About years of invisible work finally having a chance to shine, only to be stolen at the finish line. I could walk away. I could quit. I could make a scene. Or I could do something else entirely. I opened my laptop with surprisingly steady hands and began typing. First, an email to IT requesting access logs for the company's project management system. Then, a message to Desmond asking if he still had those files I'd shared with him last week, the ones with the original timestamps and my digital signature. As I worked, a strange calm washed over me. This wasn't the first time someone had tried to diminish me, and in that moment, I decided it would be the last. By the time people began filtering into the office, 2 hours later, I had compiled enough evidence to begin building my case. Lucas might have the CEO's ear on the golf course, but I had something more valuable: proof. I closed my laptop just as Desmond appeared in the doorway, his expression a mixture of concern and anger. "Tell me it's not true," he said, closing the door behind him. "It's worse than you think," I replied. He ran a hand over his close-cropped hair. "Danny, you can't let him get away with this." "I don't intend to." The certainty in my voice surprised even me. Desmond studied my face. "What are you going to do?" For the first time that morning, I smiled. "I'm going to let the truth speak for itself." What I didn't say, what I couldn't fully articulate even to myself, was that this moment would define not just how others saw me, but how I saw myself. Would I remain invisible, or would I finally claim the space I'd earned? The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. I had less than an hour to prepare for the most important confrontation of my professional life. As I gathered my evidence, my mind drifted back to the day Lucas Blake first walked through the doors of Helix Strategy Partners. 2 years ago, but it felt like a lifetime. I had just submitted my application for the Director of Analytics position, a role I'd been unofficially performing for months since the previous director left. My quarterly reviews were stellar, my project outcomes exceeded targets by an average of 27%, and I had personally secured 3 mid-tier clients. The promotion seemed inevitable. Then Lucas arrived, handpicked by our CEO, Patrick Caldwell from a competing firm. His resume was impressive on paper, MBA from Wharton, previous experience at a top 5 consulting firm, but those of us working closely with him quickly discovered the gap between his credentials and his capabilities. He just asked me to explain what a pivot table is, Desmond had whispered to me during Lucas's first week. How did this guy get hired as our director? I remembered shushing Desmond, still clinging to the belief that merit would eventually be recognized. Even after being passed over for the promotion I'd earned, I remained loyal to Helix, convincing myself that my time would come if I just worked harder, stayed later, delivered more. The memory of my naivety made me wince as I sorted through emails in my private folder, the one where I'd meticulously saved every interaction with Lucas, a habit born from subtle unease rather than conscious suspicion. There it was, the email from last Thursday. From Lucas Blake to Danielle Morgan. Subject, Westlake Proposal. Danielle, send over the sustainability proposal for review before the weekend. I need to be prepared for Monday's meeting. Lucas Blake, Director of Analytics, Helix Strategy. Partners. And my response? Sent within minutes, attaching the complete presentation with all supporting documentation. The timestamp, 4:23 p.m., Thursday. Then came the smoking gun, an email Lucas had forwarded to Patrick Caldwell and the board at 6:17 p.m. that same day. I'd been blind copied by mistake, a rare technical error from someone usually careful to cover his tracks. From Lucas Blake to Patrick Caldwell, Board Distribution List. Subject, Confidential, Innovative Sustainability Approach for Westlake. Patrick and team attached is my comprehensive sustainability strategy for Westlake Industries. This approach represents a significant opportunity for Helix to expand our footprint in the environmental consulting space. I'm scheduled to present this on Monday and would appreciate any advance feedback. Lucas Blake, Director of Analytics, Helix Strategy. Partners attached was my exact file, unchanged except for the removal of my name and the addition of his. The audacity was breathtaking, but what truly shocked me was the discovery I made next. After digging through our legal department's digital records, access granted thanks to a favor from a paralegal I'd helped through a data crisis last year. Lucas had submitted legal documents claiming authorship of the sustainability model, NDA-bound paperwork that would give him exclusive rights to my intellectual property within the company. My hands shook again, but this time with something other than fear. A slow burning resolve was taking its place. I printed everything, the original concept document with my digital signature, the email exchanges, the IT-certified version history showing my work creation timeline, and most damning of all, the NDA with Lucas's signature claiming sole authorship. As I assembled these materials into individual binders for each board member, I thought about all the times I'd remained silent, all the moments I'd swallowed my words to maintain peace or protect my job, all the credit I'd surrendered to louder, more confident voices. "You're too quiet in meetings," my previous boss had once told me during a review. "People don't remember you're in the room. They would remember today." My phone buzzed with a text from Desmond. Conference room filling up, Lucas looking smug. "You coming?" I responded with a simple, "On my way." As I gathered the binders and took a deep breath, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different somehow, centered and focused rather than afraid. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about the promotion anymore. It was about truth, and I was finally ready to speak mine. I walked deliberately down the hallway toward the boardroom, passing the cubicles where I'd spent countless hours proving myself over and over again. Colleagues nodded or waved, some with curiosity about the stack of binders in my arms, others hardly noticing me, as usual. At the boardroom door, I paused. On the other side, Lucas Blake was about to present my work as his own to the company's most senior leadership. He would smile and charm and take credit for my innovation, my late nights, my breakthrough thinking. Unless I stopped him. I adjusted my blazer, squared my shoulders, and pushed open the door. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. 12 pairs of eyes turned to me, some curious, some annoyed at the interruption. Lucas was mid-sentence, standing confidently at the head of the table with my presentation projected behind him. He paused, a flicker of unease crossing his face before his practiced smile returned. "Ah, Danielle, glad you could join us." His tone suggested I was late rather than an intended participant. I was just explaining the sustainability matrix we developed. We. Such a small word to cover such a significant lie. Patrick Caldwell, our CEO, glanced up from his notes. At 56, with steel-gray hair and a reputation for ruthless efficiency, he rarely acknowledged anyone below director level. Today was no exception, as his eyes passed over me without recognition before returning to Lucas. "Continue, Mr. Blake. You were discussing implementation timelines." I moved quietly to an empty chair near the back of the room, placing my stack of binders on the table. The sound drew a few glances, but attention quickly returned to Lucas as he advanced to the next slide, the innovative 3-tier approach I'd developed. After studying sustainability failures across 5 industries. This proprietary model, Lucas said, using the laser pointer to highlight my work, represents a paradigm shift in how we approach environmental compliance for clients of Westlake's size. My proprietary model, my research, my paradigm shift. I watched as board members nodded appreciatively. The chief financial officer made notes. The VP of business development leaned forward with interest. They were impressed, as they should be. The approach was revolutionary, but it wasn't Lucas's. For 20 more minutes, I sat silently as he walked through every aspect of my proposal. He stumbled occasionally on the technical details, but recovered with charm, making jokes about getting too deep in the weeds whenever he hit concepts he didn't fully understand. Finally, he reached the conclusion slide. So, in summary, this sustainability initiative positions Helix to not only secure the Westlake contract, but also to establish ourselves as innovators in the environmental consulting space. He closed with a confident smile. We project a 22% increase in departmental revenue if implemented as designed. Patrick Caldwell actually clapped, a brief restrained gesture, but from him, it was equivalent to a standing ovation. "This might just take us into the next decade, Lucas. Well done." Lucas beamed, soaking in the praise. "Thank you, sir. It's been a labor of love." That was when I found my voice. "Mr. Caldwell, if I may..." Lucas stiffened. The room shifted uncomfortably as all eyes turned to me. "Danielle, we've already covered the technical aspects," Lucas said, his tone dismissive but tinged with warning. I met his gaze steadily. "I believe what you're being shown is a fabrication." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Several board members straightened in their chairs. Patrick Caldwell's eyes narrowed. "The idea is valid, yes," I continued, my voice remarkably calm. "But the authorship, the testing, the intellectual property, all belong to me." Lucas laughed, though the sound held no humor. "This is inappropriate, Danielle. If you had concerns about your contribution not being acknowledged, we could have discussed this privately." "I have more than concerns," I said, standing now. "I have evidence." I began distributing the binders I'd prepared, one to each person at the table. Lucas watched, his composure visibly cracking as I placed the last one directly in front of Patrick Caldwell. "What you'll find inside," I explained as everyone opened their binders, "is the original concept document, dated and digitally signed by me 3 months ago. You'll also find a complete Slack thread showing Mr. Blake requesting my files last Thursday, followed by an IT-certified version history showing my work creation timeline." The room was completely silent now. Lucas had gone pale. "Additionally," I continued, "you'll see screenshots of email exchanges showing Mr. Blake forwarding my work to this board under his name, less than 2 hours after requesting it from me for review." Patrick Caldwell was frowning deeply now, flipping through the pages with methodical precision. "This isn't what it looks like," Lucas began stammering. "I was, collaborating. We were working together." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "And on page 12, you'll find the most concerning item. Mr. Blake submitted a signed NDA claiming full authorship of this sustainability model, violating both company policy and federal intellectual property law." I placed a copy of the signed NDA on the table, where everyone could see it. The silence that followed was deafening. Patrick Caldwell looked up from the documents, his expression unreadable. "These are serious allegations, Ms. Morgan." "They are facts, sir," I replied simply. "Verifiable through any of our systems. I'm happy to walk you through each piece of evidence." Lucas's face had moved from pale to flushed. This is absurd. She's trying to sabotage me because she's jealous of my position. She's always been resentful." "That's enough, Mr. Blake," Patrick interrupted, his voice cold. He turned to the head of legal affairs. "Jennifer, what's your initial assessment?" Jennifer Williams adjusted her glasses as she studied the documents. "If these records are authentic, and they appear to be, we have a significant breach of our intellectual property protocols. The NDA submission alone constitutes a violation of company policy." Patrick nodded and then looked at me, really seeing me for perhaps the first time. "Ms. Morgan, how long have you been with Helix?" 8 years, sir." Something shifted in his expression. "And you developed this sustainability model?" "Yes, sir, over the past 3 months. I can walk you through every stage of its development, including the research methodologies and statistical models." He considered this, then turned to Lucas. "Can you do the same, Mr. Blake?" Lucas opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I oversaw the project. Danielle worked on components under my direction." "That's not what these records indicate," Jennifer interjected, pointing to the email thread. Patrick's jaw tightened. He stood abruptly. "We'll take a 15-minute recess. Mr. Blake, my office. Ms. Williams, please join us. Ms. Morgan, please remain available." As they filed out, Lucas shot me a look of pure venom. I returned his gaze steadily, neither triumphant nor angry, just present. Desmond slipped into the room as others left for the break. "Holy shit, Danny," he whispered, sliding into the chair beside me. "You actually did it." "I just told the truth," I said, surprised at how calm I felt. "Nothing more." "No, you did way more than that. You stood up to him when everyone else was too scared to." He nodded toward the remaining board members who were huddled in conversation, occasionally glancing my way. "Look at them. They're actually seeing you now." He was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. But strangely, that wasn't what mattered most to me in that moment. What mattered was that I had finally stood up for myself, for my work, for my truth. 15 minutes later, Patrick Caldwell returned alone. His expression was grave as he addressed the reconvened board. "Mr. Blake has been temporarily relieved of his duties pending a full investigation. Ms. Morgan will take us through the remainder of the presentation." And just like that, I found myself at the head of the table, presenting my work to the company's leadership, not with Lucas's polished charm, but with the genuine passion and deep knowledge that comes from true authorship. When I finished, Patrick Caldwell didn't clap. Instead, he asked questions. Tough, probing. Questions that demonstrated he was actually engaging with the ideas. And I answered each one with confidence, my expertise evident in every response. As the meeting concluded, he approached me. "Ms. Morgan, I'd like to see you in my office at 4 o'clock. There are matters we need to discuss." I nodded, uncertain whether to feel anxious or hopeful. As the boardroom emptied, I remained seated, absorbing what had just happened. For the first time in my career, I had refused to be silenced. I had spoken my truth, regardless of the consequences. And now, whatever came next, I knew I would face it as this new version of myself, the one who understood that her voice deserved to be heard. By lunchtime, the news had spread through Helix like wildfire. Lucas Blake, the golden boy of Upper Management, had been escorted to HR and then out of the building. His company laptop was confiscated, his access badges deactivated. The corporate machine that had once elevated him now efficiently erased his presence. I sat at my desk, trying to focus on work while colleagues walked by, some offering quiet nods of support, others observing me with newfound curiosity. The analytical part of my brain, the part that had always served me well professionally, was cataloging these reactions, noting the shifting power dynamics. But emotionally, I felt strangely detached, as if watching the events unfold from a distance. Desmond appeared at my cubicle, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, placing one on my desk. "It's been quite a morning." I accepted the coffee, gratefully. Is it terrible that I don't feel anything? No satisfaction, no vindication, nothing. He shook his head. "Shock, probably. It'll hit you later." He lowered his voice. HR is interviewing people on your team. They're taking this seriously, Danny. Really seriously. What are they asking? About Lucas, his management style, whether anyone else experienced similar situations. Desmond hesitated. Turns out you weren't the first, just the first to have receipts. This didn't surprise me. Predators rarely had just one victim. What happens now? I asked, more to myself than to Desmond. Now you go to your meeting with Caldwell and you ask for what you deserve. His expression was earnest. This is your moment, Danny. Don't let it pass. As the afternoon wore on, emails flooded my inbox. Colleagues seeking clarification on projects, clients requesting information, even a few discreet messages of support from other departments. I handled each one with the same methodical efficiency I always had, refusing to let the day's events disrupt my workflow. At 3:55 p.m., I gathered my notes and headed toward Patrick Caldwell's corner office. His assistant, Marion, gave me a small smile. As I approached, another first. He's expecting you, she said, gesturing toward the door. Go right in. Patrick was standing at the window when I entered, looking out over the San Diego skyline. He turned as the door closed behind me. Ms. Morgan, he said, motioning to the chairs in front of his desk. Please sit. I took a seat, keeping my expression neutral despite my racing heart. I've spent the afternoon reviewing your personnel file, he began, sitting across from me. 8 years with Helix, consistently exemplary performance reviews, multiple client commendations. He looked up from the file. And yet, I didn't know your name until today. The admission hung between us. That's a failure of leadership, he continued. My leadership. This was unexpected. I had prepared for many scenarios, but not an apology. Sir, he held up a hand. Let me finish, please. What happened today is unacceptable on multiple levels. Mr. Blake's actions were a clear violation of our policies. Yes, but they were enabled by a culture that I've allowed to develop, one where genuine contribution can be overshadowed by, he searched for the right words, more visible qualities. I remained silent, waiting. The investigation will continue, but the preliminary findings support everything you presented this morning. He closed the file. Legal is exploring our options. There may be criminal implications given the nature of the NDA violation. The weight of this statement settled over me. This had moved beyond office politics. Lucas could face serious consequences. That's not what I wanted, I said quietly. I just wanted recognition for my work. Patrick studied me with new respect, and you deserve it. Which brings me to the next matter. He slid a folder across the desk. This is a proposal. I'd like you to review it and let me know your thoughts. I opened the folder to find an offer letter. Director of Strategic Innovation. A new position, reporting directly to Patrick, with a salary nearly double my current one. This role would give you oversight of our sustainability initiatives, including the Westlake project, he explained. You'd build your own team, with autonomy to implement the model you developed. It was everything I'd worked for, everything I deserved. Yet I found myself hesitating. May I ask a question, sir? Of course. Will I be allowed to build a team that reflects integrity and not just titles? People should be valued for their contributions, not their connections. Something like surprise flickered across his face, followed by what might have been respect. It's exactly why I want you in that seat, Ms. Morgan. I looked down at the offer again. I'd like time to consider it. Take the weekend. We can discuss details on Monday. He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. And Ms. Morgan, thank you for your honesty today. It couldn't have been easy. As I turned to leave, he added, one more thing. The board was impressed with your presentation, particularly your command of the technical elements. They'd like you to lead the Westlake pitch next week. I nodded, allowing myself a small smile. I'd be honored. Walking back to my desk, I felt the eyes of colleagues following me. The story had clearly circulated. Whispers trailed in my wake, but they no longer felt dismissive. They felt like recognition. Desmond was waiting at my cubicle, barely containing his curiosity. Well, what happened? I showed him the offer letter. His eyes widened. Holy shit, Danny! Director level? That's huge! I asked, for time to think about it. He stared at me incredulously. What's there to think about? This is everything you've been working for. I began gathering my things, suddenly eager to leave the office and process the day's events in solitude. It is, but I want to make sure I'm taking it for the right reasons. The right reason is that you earned it, he insisted. That you deserve it. I smiled at his fervor. Maybe. But I need to make sure I want it too. That it's the right next step. As we walked toward the elevator, Desmond shook his head in amazement. You know, when I warned you about Lucas months ago, I never thought it would end like this. How did you think it would end? Honestly, with you getting pushed out and him getting promoted again. He pressed the elevator button. Corporate America isn't known for its justice. As the elevator doors opened, I had a sudden flashback to all the mornings I'd ridden up to this floor, invisible and underestimated. Tomorrow would be different. I would be different. Sometimes, I said as we stepped inside, the truth just needs a chance to be heard. Friday evening found me on my balcony, a glass of wine in hand, watching the sunset over San Diego Bay. My small apartment had always been my sanctuary, a place where I could shed the professional mask I wore all day and simply be. Tonight it felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The events of the day kept replaying in my mind. Lucas's face as I distributed the evidence, Patrick Caldwell actually seeing me for the first time, the offer letter, still sitting on my kitchen counter, unopened since I'd brought it home. My phone buzzed with another message, the 7th from Desmond since I'd left the office. Have you decided yet? Please tell me you're taking the job. I smiled, but didn't respond. Desmond meant well, but this decision needed to be mine alone. I took a sip of wine and considered what the promotion would mean. More money? Certainly. Recognition. Finally. Power to implement changes and build a team based on merit rather than connections. All things I had wanted for years. So, why the hesitation? My gaze drifted to the sketchbook stacked on my balcony table. Evidence of the creative side I kept separate from my analytical work life. Watercolors of coastal landscapes, charcoal studies of urban architecture, pen, sketches of people in cafes. Drawing had always been my private passion, the thing that kept me balanced when spreadsheets and strategy documents threatened to consume me. Would a director-level position leave room for this part of myself? Or would it demand even more of my time, my energy, my identity? I was startled from my thoughts by a knock at the door. Puzzled. I rarely had unexpected visitors. I set down my wine and went to answer it. Through the peephole, I saw Maria Vasquez, one of the junior analysts from my team. Surprised, I opened the door. Maria, is everything okay? She stood awkwardly in the hallway, clutching her purse. I'm sorry to bother you at home, Danielle. I got your address from Desmond. I hope that's all right. Of course, I said, though I made a mental note. To have a word with Desmond about sharing my personal information. Come in. Maria entered hesitantly, her eyes taking in my apartment, the bookshelves filled with art books and novels, the plants thriving on every available surface, the paintings, some my own, others from local artists, adorning the walls. Your place is beautiful, she said. It's so you. I smiled at that. Thank you. Though, I'm curious how you'd know what's me when we've barely spoken outside of project meetings. Maria flushed. That's kind of why I'm here. She perched on the edge of my sofa when I gestured for her to sit. What you did today, standing up to Lucas like that. I just wanted to say thank you. You don't need to thank me for that. I do. Her voice was firm now. Because he was doing the same thing to me. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. What do you mean? 3 months ago, I developed a client retention model for the healthcare division. Lucas asked to review it, then presented it to the department heads as his own work. She twisted her hands in her lap. I didn't have your courage. I didn't say anything. Maria, that's not about courage. It's about evidence. I had the receipts. She shook her head. No, it's about courage too. I could have documented things like you did, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing my job. Afraid of being labeled difficult. She looked up at me. Afraid of not being believed. The weight in my stomach grew heavier. How many others had Lucas exploited? How many good ideas had been stolen? How many careers stunted because of fear? HR interviewed me today, Maria continued. I told them everything. They're talking to others too. Apparently, there's a pattern. I'm sorry you went through that, I said, meaning it. No one should have their work stolen. That's why I came here. To tell you that you didn't just stand up for yourself today. You stood up for all of us. She smiled, a genuine warm expression. And to ask if the rumors are true, that you're being promoted to director and will be building your own team. I hesitated. I've been offered a position, yes. I haven't decided whether to take it. Her eyes widened in surprise. Why wouldn't you? It was a fair question, one I'd been asking myself all evening. I need to be sure it's what I want, not just what I've been programmed to chase. I surprised myself with, this admission. Success doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Maria considered this, then asked, what would make you say yes? The question caught me off guard with its simplicity and its depth. What would make me say yes? Not just to this job, but to the path it represented? If I believed I could make actual change, I finally answered. If I could create a team where people like you aren't afraid to speak up, where good work is recognized regardless of who does it. I paused, realizing something important. If I could be the leader I needed 8 years ago, when I first joined Helix. Maria nodded, understanding blooming in her expression. That's why it has to be you, Danielle. Because you're asking these questions at all. After Maria left, I returned to my balcony, her words echoing in my mind. The sunset had faded to deep purple, the city lights beginning to twinkle across the bay. I pulled out my phone and finally responded to Desmond's messages. I think I'm going to take it, but on my terms. His reply came seconds later. Yes! Drinks tomorrow to celebrate? I want to hear everything. I smiled and typed back, lunch instead. And don't think I've forgotten that. You gave out my address. Setting down my phone, I picked up one of my sketchbooks and began to draw. Not spreadsheets or strategy maps, but the view before me. The bridge of light spanning across the water, the silhouettes of buildings against the darkening sky, the vastness of possibility stretching out to the horizon. This moment, this quiet, creative solitude, was as much a part of me as my analytical mind. Whatever path I chose needed to honor both. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. I woke early, as was my habit even on weekends, and went for a run along the harbor. Physical movement had always helped clarify my thoughts, and today was no exception. With each stride, my path forward became clearer. I would accept the position, but I would do it my way. I would build a team, based on talent and integrity. I would create space for voices like Maria's to be heard, and I would maintain boundaries to protect the parts of myself that made me whole. By the time I met Desmond for lunch at our favorite taco place near Balboa Park, my decision was made. Look at you, he said as I slid into the booth opposite him. You're practically glowing. Is this what justice looks like? I laughed. This is what clarity looks like. Over fish tacos and horchata, I told him my plans. Not just for the new position, but for the kind of leader I intended to be. I want to build something different, I explained. A team where people are valued for their minds, not their ability to play politics. Desmond nodded, sipping his drink. Noble goal, but corporate culture doesn't change. Overnight, Danny. You'll be fighting an uphill battle. I know, but it's a battle worth fighting. I leaned forward. And I want you on my team. He nearly choked on his horchata. What? Me? Yes, you, as my second in command. I smiled at his stunned expression. You've been the only person consistently in my corner for years. You have brilliant ideas that no one listens to because you don't. Play the game. Together, we could create something revolutionary. I don't know what to say. Say yes. We'll figure out the rest. His expression shifted from shock to determination. Yes, absolutely yes. As we finished our lunch, discussing possibilities and plans, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just about a promotion or vindication, it was about transformation. Of Helix, yes, but more importantly, of myself. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. I reviewed the offer letter, making notes on points to negotiate. I sketched organizational structures and team frameworks. I researched innovative management approaches that fostered both creativity and productivity. By Sunday evening, I felt ready to step into this new chapter, not as the, Danielle, who had been invisible for 8 years, but as the woman who had found her voice and was ready to use it. Monday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I dressed with particular care, a tailored navy suit that I'd purchased months ago, but had never found the right occasion to wear. Today felt right. The atmosphere in the office was noticeably different as I stepped off the elevator. Conversations hushed briefly as I passed, followed by whispers and glances. Not malicious, but curious. Word had clearly spread about Friday's confrontation and its aftermath. Marion, Patrick Caldwell's assistant, intercepted me before I reached my cubicle. "Mr. Caldwell would like to see you first thing," she said, her tone warmer than I'd ever heard it. "He's in his office whenever." "You're ready." I nodded, grateful for the immediate opportunity to discuss the offer. I'll head there now. Thank you, Marion. As I walked toward the executive wing, Desmond gave me a thumbs up from across the office. I smiled in return, drawing strength from his support. Patrick was reviewing documents when I knocked on his open door. He looked up, setting aside his reading glasses. Ms. Morgan, please come in. I entered, closing the door behind me. The corner office was impressive, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city, modern furniture in muted tones, awards and credentials tastefully displayed on the walls, power and accomplishment made tangible. Have you had a chance to review the offer? He asked, gesturing for me to take a seat. I have, I replied, settling into the chair across from him, and I'd like to accept with a few proposed adjustments. If he was surprised by my negotiation attempt, he didn't show it. I'm listening. I placed my annotated copy of the offer letter on his desk. The compensation is generous and I appreciate it, but there are structural elements I'd like to discuss. For the next 30 minutes, we had the most direct and productive conversation of my career. I outlined my vision for the Strategic Innovation Division, a flatter hierarchy, transparent project attribution, and a merit-based advancement system. I requested the authority to restructure team assignments based on skill sets rather than seniority. And most importantly, I asked for Desmond Hart to be promoted alongside me as Associate Director. Patrick listened attentively, asking occasional questions but mostly allowing me to present my complete vision. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, studying me with newfound respect. You've given this considerable thought, he said finally. I have. This isn't just about a title or salary for me, Mr. Caldwell. It's about creating meaningful change in how we operate. He nodded slowly. The board and I discussed at length what happened with Mr. Blake. We're committed to ensuring nothing similar occurs again. He gestured to my annotated offer. Your proposals align with that commitment. I'm prepared to approve all of them. I felt a wave of relief, quickly followed by determination. Thank you, sir. Patrick, please. We'll be working closely together. He extended his hand. Across the desk. Welcome to the leadership team, Danielle. As we shook hands, I realized how different this felt from what I had imagined. In my daydreams about advancement, I had pictured validation, vindication, perhaps even a moment of triumph. Instead, I felt something quieter, but more profound, a sense of rightness, of stepping into a role I had earned through both competence and integrity. When would you like to announce the changes? I asked. I've scheduled a department meeting for 10 o'clock. We can make it official then. He smiled slightly. I suspect it won't come as a surprise to most. He was right. When the announcement came, the applause seemed genuine, particularly from the junior staff. Maria beamed from the back of the room. Desmond, called forward to acknowledge his own promotion, looked equal parts shocked and thrilled. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of meetings, congratulations, and logistical details. By late afternoon, I found myself in what would be my new office. Not a corner suite like Patrick's, but a significant upgrade from my cubicle, with actual walls and a door I could close. Desmond appeared in the doorway as I was arranging the few personal items I'd brought from my desk: a small potted succulent, a framed print of a painting I loved, a mug given to me years ago by my first mentor at Helix. So, he said, leaning against the doorframe, Director Morgan, how does it feel? I considered the question seriously. Surreal, but right. He nodded. You know, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about building something different. I've been drafting some ideas. He held up a tablet. Want to hear them? Absolutely. Come in and close the door. For the next hour, we sketched out possibilities, reorganizing teams based on complementary skills rather than departmental silos, implementing a project attribution system that recognized all contributors, creating mentorship pathways for promising junior staff like Maria. As we talked, I felt a growing certainty that this act of creation and leadership was what I had been working toward all along. Not just a title or recognition, but the opportunity to shape something meaningful. This won't be easy, Desmond cautioned as our planning session wound down. We're talking about changing ingrained practices. There will be resistance. I know, I acknowledged. But we have support from the top, and I think we'll find allies where we least expect them. I thought of Maria and wondered how many others like her were waiting for a chance to be heard. Sometimes people just need to see that change is possible. As Desmond left to attend another meeting, I turned to the window, looking out at the city I'd called home for over a decade. From this higher floor, the view was different, wider, with a clearer perspective on how the parts connected to form the whole. A perfect metaphor, I thought, for what had happened in the past 4 days. I hadn't just moved up a floor. I'd gained a new vantage point from which to see my work, my company, and myself. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister in Boston. Heard your news from Des. So proud of you, sis. We need to celebrate when I visit next month. I smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond professional accomplishment. This victory meant something to the people who loved me, who had witnessed my struggles and supported me through the invisible years. Turning back to my desk, I noticed an email from Patrick with the subject line, Westlake Presentation. The client meeting was scheduled for Thursday, giving me 3 days to prepare. This would be my first official act as Director of Strategic Innovation, presenting the sustainability model that had catalyzed all these changes. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. This presentation had always been mine to give. Now it would happen with my name properly attached, my role properly acknowledged. As I began reviewing the materials, I felt no desire for revenge against Lucas, no need to see him suffer further consequences. His actions had revealed his character, mine had revealed mine. That was justice enough. What mattered now was moving forward, building something worthy of the trust that had been placed in me, creating space for others to be seen and valued, becoming the kind of leader I had always needed. The path ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time in years, I felt completely ready to face them. Thursday morning arrived with a mixture of anticipation and nervous energy. The Westlake presentation wasn't just another client pitch. It was the culmination of my sustainability model, the project that had catalyzed my professional transformation, and my first major presentation as Director of Strategic Innovation. I arrived at the office earlier than usual, taking time to center myself before the day's events. The boardroom was empty and peaceful as I set up my materials and ran through a final review of the presentation. Desmond appeared at 7:30, 2 coffee cups in hand. Thought you might need reinforcements, he said, placing one in front of me. Though you look surprisingly calm for someone about to pitch to a Fortune 100 company. I smiled, accepting the coffee gratefully. I've lived with this presentation for months. It's practically part of me at this point. Still, he said, settling into a chair beside me, this is different. Higher stakes. He wasn't wrong. Westlake Industries represented our largest potential client to date, a manufacturing conglomerate with facilities across North America. If they adopted our sustainability model, it would not only transform their environmental impact, but could establish Helix as a leader in the sustainability consulting space. Different, yes, I acknowledged. But I'm ready. We spent the next hour fine-tuning details and discussing how to address potential questions. At 8:45, Patrick Caldwell joined us, followed shortly by Jennifer Williams from Legal and Mark Tanner, our Chief Financial Officer. The Westlake team will be here at 9, Patrick informed us, reviewing his notes. CEO, COO, their sustainability director, and 2 board members. He looked up at me. They're taking this seriously. As they should, I replied with quiet confidence. Our model could reduce their environmental impact by 32% while increasing operational efficiency. That's not just good ethics, it's good business. Patrick nodded approvingly. That's exactly the tone to strike with them. He hesitated, then added, I know this presentation has special significance, given recent events, but focus on the future, not the past. That's all I'm interested in, I assured him. At precisely 9 a.m., Marion escorted the Westlake team into the boardroom. Robert Westlake himself led the delegation, a tall, imposing figure with silver hair and penetrating blue eyes. As the third-generation CEO of the family company, his presence signaled the importance of this meeting. Introductions were made, pleasantries exchanged. I noticed Robert Westlake studying me with particular interest, as Patrick introduced me as the architect of the sustainability model we're presenting today. Once everyone was seated, Patrick made brief opening remarks before turning the floor over to me. And now, I'd like to introduce Danielle Morgan, our Director of Strategic Innovation, who will walk you through our proposal. As I stood and moved to the front of the room, I felt a moment of perfect clarity. This was what I had worked for all these years. Not just the title or the recognition, but this opportunity to present ideas that could create meaningful change. Thank you for joining us today, I began, my voice steady and confident. What I'm about to share with you isn't just another sustainability initiative. It's a comprehensive reimagining of how manufacturing operations like Westlake's can thrive economically while dramatically reducing environmental impact. For the next 45 minutes, I guided them through the three-tier approach I'd developed, showing how integrated changes in supply chain management, energy utilization, and waste processing could create cascading efficiencies throughout their operations. I presented case studies, financial projections, and implementation timelines, answering questions thoughtfully as they arose. Throughout the presentation, I noticed Robert Westlake taking detailed notes, occasionally nodding or asking incisive questions that demonstrated a genuine understanding of the concepts. When I concluded, there was a moment of silence before he spoke. "Ms. Morgan, this is the most comprehensive sustainability approach I've seen," he said, looking directly at me. "You've clearly considered the practical realities of implementation, not just the theoretical benefits." "That was my intention," I replied. "Sustainability initiatives fail when they ignore operational realities. This model is designed to work with your existing systems, not against them." He nodded appreciatively. "You mentioned your background is in analytics. How did you develop such insight into manufacturing processes?" "Research, primarily," I answered honestly. "I spent time studying manufacturing operations similar to yours. I interviewed plant managers and sustainability officers from various industries, and I identified patterns in both successful and failed sustainability initiatives." "Impressive," he commented, then turned to Patrick. "Mr. Caldwell, I believe we have the foundation for a productive partnership here." The next hour was spent discussing contract terms, implementation details, and next steps. By the time the Westlake team departed, we had a verbal commitment and a timeline for finalizing agreements. As the boardroom emptied, Patrick lingered behind. "That," he said simply, "was exceptional work, Danielle." "Thank you," I replied, gathering my, materials. "It feels good to see it so well received." "It's more than well received. Robert Westlake called me aside as they were leaving. He specifically mentioned how impressed he was with your command of the material." Patrick's expression was thoughtful. He doesn't give praise easily. I felt a quiet satisfaction that went beyond professional pride. This wasn't about ego or validation. It was about seeing good work recognized on its merits. "There's something else," Patrick continued. "The Sustainability Summit in Boston next month, I'd like you to represent Helix as a featured speaker. With the Westlake project secured, it's the perfect platform to establish our leadership in the field." The invitation caught me by surprise. The annual summit was a prestigious gathering of industry, leaders and environmental innovators, a significant opportunity for visibility both for Helix and for me personally. "I'd be honored," I said, already mentally cataloging the key points I would want to address. "Excellent. We'll discuss details next week." He checked his watch. "I have another meeting, but again, outstanding job today." After he left, I remained in the boardroom alone, taking a moment to absorb what had just happened. In 1 week, my professional life had transformed completely, from invisible worker to recognized leader, from having my work stolen to seeing it valued and implemented. Desmond found me there, still gathering my thoughts. "I heard it went amazingly," he said, dropping into the chair beside me. "The admin team said Westlake himself was practically glowing." When he left, I smiled. It went well. The model resonated with them. "Of course it did. It's brilliant." He studied my expression. "You okay? You seem quiet for someone who just landed the biggest client in company history." "I'm more than okay," I assured him. "Just processing everything. It's been an intense week." "That," he said with a laugh, "is the understatement of the year." He leaned forward. "So, Director Morgan, what's next on your revolutionary agenda?" I thought about Patrick's invitation to the Sustainability Summit, about the Westlake implementation that would begin next week, about the team restructuring Desmond and I had been planning. "Everything," I replied with a smile. "We have a lot of work to do." As we left the boardroom together, I noticed Maria watching from her cubicle. I gestured for her to join us. "The presentation went well?" she asked eagerly as she approached. "Very well. We got the contract." I made a spontaneous decision. "In fact, I'd like you to join the implementation team. Your client retention model would be valuable in the next phase." Her eyes widened. "Really? You want me on the project?" "Absolutely. Your analytical skills are exactly what we need." I glanced at Desmond, who nodded approvingly. We're building a team based on talent, Maria, and you have plenty of it. As she thanked me and returned to her desk with new energy in her step, Desmond chuckled. You've been director for 3 days, and you're already changing lives. That's the point, isn't it? I replied. To use this position to create the kind of, environment we always wanted to work in. Walking back to my office, I noticed people looking at me differently, not with the dismissive glances of the past, but with respect and even admiration. It wasn't just the title that had changed their perception. It was how I had earned it, how I had stood up for myself with dignity rather than anger, with evidence rather than accusations. I thought back to that Monday morning when I discovered Lucas rehearsing my presentation, how devastated and powerless I had felt. I couldn't have imagined then that a week later, I would be here, successful, respected, and genuinely optimistic about the future. Not because someone had granted me these things, but because I had finally claimed them for myself. The weeks following the Westlake presentation unfolded with whirlwind intensity. Implementing the sustainability model required coordinated effort across multiple departments, frequent client communications, and careful tracking of benchmarks and milestones. As project lead, I found myself stretched in new directions, my leadership tested daily. But unlike the exhaustion of my previous years at Helix, the thankless grind of invisible work, this was exhilarating. Each challenge was an opportunity to prove what was possible when good ideas were properly supported and credited. 1 month into my new role, I sat in my office reviewing the latest implementation reports when Desmond knocked on my open door. Got a minute? He asked, holding a folder. For you, always. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. What's up? He closed the doctor before sitting, a sign that whatever he wanted to discuss required privacy. I've been analyzing the team effectiveness data since we restructured, he said, opening the folder. The results are, well, see for yourself. He handed me a series of charts showing productivity metrics, client satisfaction scores, and employee engagement measures, all tracked before and after our reorganization. This can't be right, I murmured, studying the numbers. Are we really seeing a 40% increase in project completion rates? Desmond nodded. And a 28% improvement in client satisfaction scores. Plus, sick days are down, and the anonymous feedback survey shows employee satisfaction up by nearly a third. I leaned back, processing the implications. When we had restructured the teams, organizing, people by complementary skills rather than traditional hierarchies, and implementing the attribution system that credited all contributors, we'd faced significant resistance from middle management. Several senior analysts had complained to Patrick about disruption of established protocols. 2 had even resigned in protest. Yet here was clear evidence that the changes were working, not just for morale, but for the bottom line. Have you shown these to Patrick? I asked. Not yet. Wanted you to see them first. I smiled. Let's schedule time with him tomorrow. This validates everything we've been saying about recognizing contributions and organizing around talents rather than titles. Desmond collected the reports, his expression thoughtful. You know what's really interesting? The biggest improvements are coming from people like Maria, talented folks who were previously overlooked. Given room to shine, they do, I observed. It's not complicated. No, but it is revolutionary in corporate America. He stood to leave. By the way, how's the summit preparation coming? Boston's only 2 weeks away. The reminder sent a flutter of nervous excitement through me. The Sustainability Summit had grown significantly in my mind since Patrick's initial invitation. My presentation there wouldn't just represent Helix. It would establish me professionally in a way that transcended any company title. Almost finished, I assured him. I'm focusing on practical implementation rather than theoretical frameworks, showing how sustainability can be both ethical and profitable. Smart, that's the sweet spot, where doing good meets good business. He paused at the door. You've come a long way from hiding in your cubicle, Danny. After he left, I turned to the window, reflecting on his words. I had come a long way, not just professionally, but personally. The woman who had stood frozen in the doorway watching Lucas steal her work would hardly recognize the person I had become, not because of a title or office, but because I had found my voice and the courage to use it. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. Flight lands 7:30 Thursday. Can't wait to see your new office and hear everything. So proud of you, sis. Claire had always been my strongest supporter, even during the years when I had little to show for my efforts. Her visit was perfectly timed. She would arrive just before I left for Boston, giving us a chance to catch up before my summit presentation. I smiled, typing back, "Can't wait to see you. I'll pick you up at the airport." The next morning, Desmond and I presented our findings to Patrick. He studied the data carefully, asking pointed questions about methodology and metrics. "These are impressive results," he finally acknowledged, particularly the client satisfaction scores. "The attribution system has been key," I explained. "When people know their contributions will be recognized, they invest more fully in the work." He nodded thoughtfully. "There's been some pushback from certain quarters." "We expected that," I replied calmly. "Change is uncomfortable, especially for those who benefited from the old system." Patrick's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "A diplomatic way of putting it." He closed the folder. "Continue with the implementation. These results speak for themselves." As we left his office, Desmond grinned. "That's as close to 'you were right' as we're going to get from him." "It's enough," I replied. "Actions matter more than words." The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings, project reviews, and preparation for both Claire's visit and the Boston summit. By Thursday evening, I found myself at the airport, scanning the arrival board for her flight from Boston. When she emerged from the security area, her face lit up at the sight of me. We embraced warmly, 8 months of separation dissolving in an instant. "Look at you," she exclaimed, stepping back to survey me. "You're glowing. Success suits you." I laughed, taking her carry-on. "It's not about success exactly. It's about finally being in the right place." During the drive to my apartment, I filled her in on the events of the past 2 months. The confrontation with Lucas, the promotion, the Westlake contract, and the team restructuring. "I still can't believe you stood up to him like that," Claire marveled as we entered my apartment. "The Danielle I knew would have quietly found another job rather than confront anyone." "The Danielle you knew was afraid of rocking the boat," I admitted, setting her bag in the guest room. "I was so focused on proving myself through work that I forgot to stand up for that work." "Well, I'm proud of you." She wandered into my living room, noticing the, new paintings on the walls, my own work, finally displayed instead of hidden in sketchbooks. "You're painting again, and these are good, Danny. Really good." "Thanks," I said, feeling a touch of self-consciousness. "It's been therapeutic, actually, a way to process everything that's happened." She studied a watercolor of the San Diego skyline at sunset, the view from my office window. "Is this your new perspective, literally and figuratively?" I smiled at her perception. "I guess it is." Over dinner at my favorite local restaurant, Claire shared news from her life in Boston. Her medical practice was thriving. She'd started dating someone new, and she was considering buying a condo. "Enough about me," she said as we finished our meal. "Tell me about this summit. Are you nervous?" "Terrified," I admitted with a laugh, "but prepared. I know this material inside and out." "You always do." She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "But this is different from your usual behind-the-scenes work. This is you, front and center, with your name attached." "That's what makes it matter," I replied softly. "For so long I was invisible. My work existed, but I didn't. Not really. Now both exist. Together, as they should." Claire nodded, understanding in her eyes. "You know, when you told me about Lucas stealing your presentation, I was furious. I wanted you to quit, to sue, to burn the place down metaphorically. I remember. You called him some very creative names." She grinned. "Still stand by those, but what you did was so much better. You didn't just get justice. You transformed the situation into something positive. You're creating real change." Her words stayed with me long after we returned to my apartment. As Claire settled into the guest room, I stepped onto my balcony, looking out at the night sky over San Diego Bay. The lights of the city reflected on the dark water, creating twin constellations above and below. I thought about transformation, how sometimes the most painful moments can catalyze the most necessary changes. Lucas's betrayal had forced me to advocate for myself in ways I never had before. That advocacy had revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed. Now I was using those strengths not just for my own advancement, but to create space for others, people like Maria who deserved to be seen and heard. That, I realized, was the true measure of how far I'd come. Not the title or the office or even the upcoming summit presentation, but this, that I was using my voice to amplify others who had been silenced. As I turned to go inside, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. Whatever challenges the Boston Summit might bring, I was ready to face them. Not as the invisible worker I had been, but as the leader I had become. The Convention Center buzzed with activity as industry leaders, environmental experts, and corporate executives gathered for the annual Sustainability Summit. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered dramatic views of the harbor, while inside, exhibition booths showcased the latest in green technologies and sustainable business practices. Standing in the speaker preparation room, I reviewed my notes one final time. In 30 minutes, I would take the main stage to present Integrated Sustainability, the Helix model for manufacturing transformation. My name was printed on the program. My biography included alongside those of renowned experts and influential CEOs. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Claire peeked in, smiling encouragingly. "How are you feeling?" she asked, slipping into the room. "Centered," I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. "I know this material better than anyone. That's my confident sister." She straightened the collar of my blazer, a small, sisterly gesture that transported me back to childhood, to Claire helping me prepare for school presentations. "The audience is filing in. It's a full house." "Really?" A flutter of nerves finally broke. Through my calm, "Really? And guess who I just saw in the front row?" "Who?" "Robert Westlake himself." She grinned. "Came to see his investment in action, I suppose." The knowledge that Westlake had made a special trip to Boston for my presentation added weight to the moment. This wasn't just about representing Helix anymore. It was about validating the faith he had placed in our approach. "Perfect," I said, gathering my materials. "That makes this even more meaningful." Claire squeezed my hand. "I'll be right in the middle section. Just pretend you're explaining it all to me." As she left to find her seat, my phone buzzed with a message from Desmond. "Wish I could be there in person. The team is gathering in the conference room to watch the live stream. Maria made Director Morgan T-shirts." I tried to stop her. Failed. "Knock 'em dead." I smiled, picturing my team back in San Diego, united in support. Another message came through, this one from Patrick Caldwell, representing Helix well. Numerous positive comments already about our sustainability leadership. Well done. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the preparation room and made my way toward the main hall, the summit. Coordinator met me at the entrance. "We're running right on schedule, Ms. Morgan. You'll be introduced in about 5 minutes." She attached a microphone to my lapel, tested the sound levels, and gave me a thumbs up. "The audience is very engaged today. Great energy in the room." I nodded, focusing on the moment rather than the hundreds of people waiting on the other side of the curtain. This was what I had prepared for, not just over the past weeks, but throughout my career. Every analysis I'd conducted, every project I'd developed, every challenge I'd overcome had led to this opportunity to share what I'd learned. "And now," came the voice of the moderator from the stage, "we're honored to present Danielle Morgan, Director of Strategic Innovation at Helix Strategy Partners. Ms. Morgan has pioneered an integrated approach to sustainability that is transforming how manufacturing corporations balance environmental responsibility with operational efficiency. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage." Applause filled the hall as I walked out, the bright lights momentarily disorienting before my eyes adjusted. The audience stretched before me, hundreds of attentive faces, including, as Claire had mentioned, Robert Westlake in the front row. He nodded slightly as our eyes met, a gesture of respect between colleagues. I placed my notes on the podium, though I knew I wouldn't need them. "Thank you for that kind introduction," I began, my voice steady and clear through the sound system. "What I want to share with you today isn't just a theoretical model for sustainability. It's a practical framework that's already proving its effectiveness in one of America's largest manufacturing operations." For the next 40 minutes, I guided the audience through the 3-tier approach, explaining how integrating sustainability into core business functions created value beyond environmental benefits. I shared specific metrics from the Westlake implementation, demonstrating how even in its early phases, the model was delivering measurable results. Throughout the presentation, I felt completely in my element, confident, articulate, and genuinely passionate about the material. When I opened the floor for questions, hands shot up across the auditorium. "Ms. Morgan," called a woman identifying herself as the sustainability director for a global shipping company, "your attribution system for tracking environmental innovations is fascinating. Have you found resistance to this level of transparency in traditional corporate structures?" I smiled, appreciating the insight behind her question. Absolutely. Transparency disrupts established power dynamics. Some leaders feel threatened when previously invisible contributions become visible. But the data is clear. Companies that recognize and reward innovation at all levels outperform those that maintain rigid hierarchies. More questions followed. Technical inquiries about implementation timelines, financial questions about ROI calculations, practical concerns about employee engagement. I answered each one thoroughly, drawing on both data and personal experience. As the session concluded, the moderator returned to the stage. That was truly illuminating, Ms. Morgan. I think I speak for everyone when I say we'll be watching the Helix-Westlake partnership with great interest. The applause as I left the stage was enthusiastic and sustained. In the hallway outside, several attendees approached with business cards and follow-up questions. I noticed Robert Westlake waiting patiently at the edge of the group. When the impromptu discussions finally concluded, he stepped forward. Exceptional presentation, Ms. Morgan. You've articulated exactly why we chose to partner with Helix. He paused, studying me with those penetrating blue eyes. Though I suspect it's more accurate to say we chose to partner with you. The implementation is a team effort, I replied, genuinely believing it. But I appreciate your, confidence in my approach. It's more than confidence at this point. It's validation. He gestured toward a quieter area of the hallway. If you have a moment, there's something I'd like to discuss. Intrigued, I followed him to a small seating area away from the main traffic flow. Claire caught my eye from across the lobby, and I signaled that I'd join her shortly. I'll be direct, Westlake said once we were seated. I'm forming an advisory council focused on industrial sustainability, leaders from various sectors who can help shape best practices and influence policy. I'd like you to join as our consulting expert. The offer caught me by surprise. That's a significant opportunity. Would this be in addition to my role at Helix? He nodded. Initially, yes. The council would meet quarterly, with some consultation work between meetings. It would complement your Helix responsibilities while giving you a broader platform for your ideas. As we discussed the details, I realized what this represented. Not just professional recognition, but the chance to influence sustainability practices across multiple industries. My model, my approach, my voice expanded beyond a single company or client. I'm very interested, I told him when he had outlined the full scope. I'd need to discuss the specifics with Patrick, of course, but this aligns perfectly with the direction I've been moving. Excellent. He stood, extending his hand. My office will be in touch with formal details next week. And Ms. Morgan, that standing ovation was well deserved. As he walked away, Claire appeared at my side, barely containing her excitement. Was that what I think it was? A job offer? Not exactly, I replied, still processing the conversation myself. An advisory position, potentially very influential. She linked her arm through mine as we headed toward the exit. Look at you. 8 weeks ago you were fighting to get credit for your own work, and now industry leaders are recruiting you to advise them. It's like watching a butterfly emerge. I laughed at her metaphor, but there was truth in it. I had transformed, not overnight, but through a process that had begun long before Lucas stole my presentation. That moment had simply been the catalyst that forced me to break free from the constraints I'd accepted for too long. That evening, Claire and I celebrated with dinner at an RO, elegant restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor. As we toasted to the day's success, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for her unwavering support, for the opportunities that had opened before me, and even, in a strange way, for the crisis that had forced me to find my voice. You know what I keep thinking about? I said as we enjoyed our meal. Maria, the junior analyst you mentioned? The one who came to your apartment? I nodded. She had her work stolen too, but she didn't have the evidence I did. She stayed silent out of fear. How many others like her are out there doing brilliant work that someone else takes credit for? Claire studied me over her glass. You're not just thinking about your own career anymore, are you? I can't, I admitted. Not after everything that's happened. Having a platform means using it for more than personal advancement. So what are you thinking? I shared the idea that had been forming since my conversation with Westlake, a mentorship initiative that would help talented but overlooked professionals document and protect their intellectual contributions, a system that would make it harder for the Lucas Blakes of the world to exploit others' work. That sounds like more than a side project, Claire observed. That sounds like a mission. She was right. What had begun as a personal fight for recognition had evolved into something larger, a vision for how workplaces could function with greater transparency and fairness. The advisory council position would give me the platform to advance these ideas beyond Helix, to influence practices across industries. As we walked back to our hotel along the waterfront, the cool autumn air carried the scent of the sea. Boston's lights reflected on the dark harbor, reminding me of my evenings on the balcony in San Diego, sketching the bay while processing all that had changed. "I'm proud of you," Claire said softly as we walked. "Not just for today's presentation or the advisory position. I'm proud of how you've handled everything, with dignity and integrity, without letting bitterness take root." Her words touched me deeply. In the week since the confrontation with Lucas, I had consciously chosen not to let anger define my path forward. Not because what he did wasn't wrong, it was profoundly so, but because I refused to let his actions determine my response to the world. "The best revenge is not becoming what hurt you," I replied. "Someone wise told me that once." Claire laughed. "That was me, quoting our grandmother." Still true. As we reached the hotel, my phone buzzed with an email notification from Patrick Caldwell. The subject line read simply, "Next steps." I would read it later, I decided, slipping the phone back into my pocket. Tonight was for celebrating how far I'd come. Tomorrow would be soon enough to consider where I was going. 6 months after the Boston summit, I stood once again in the Helix boardroom, the same room where Lucas had been rehearsing my stolen presentation that fateful morning. But everything else had changed. The morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating the faces gathered around the table. My expanded team, now 15 strong, including Maria, who had been promoted to senior analyst 3 months earlier. Desmond sat at my right hand as associate director, managing day-to-day operations while I divided my time between Helix and my growing external responsibilities. "The Q2 results are in," I announced, bringing up the slides on the main screen. "The Westlake implementation has exceeded projections by 17%. Environmental impact reductions are tracking at 35% compared to baseline, better than our initial 32% estimate." Murmurs of appreciation spread around the table. These weren't just abstract metrics. They represented the collective effort of everyone present. Under our attribution system, each team member's contributions were clearly documented and recognized, from Maria's innovative efficiency algorithms to the newest intern's insightful data visualizations. "Westlake has approved the expansion to their Canadian facilities," I continued, advancing to the next slide. "Implementation begins next month, with Desmond leading the on-site team." As the meeting progressed, I observed how differently this room operated now compared to a year ago. People spoke freely, building on each other's ideas without fear of having their contributions overlooked. Junior staff offered perspectives that challenged conventional thinking, secure in the knowledge that good ideas were valued regardless of their source. This was what I had envisioned when I accepted the director position, a collaborative environment where merit trumped politics, where innovation flourished because everyone had a stake in the outcome. After the meeting concluded and the team dispersed, Patrick Caldwell lingered behind. 6 months of working directly with him had transformed our relationship from distant hierarchy to mutual respect. He still maintained the reserved demeanor that had intimidated me in the past, but I now recognized it as his natural style, rather than a reflection of his opinion of me. "The Westlake results are impressive," he acknowledged, reviewing the data on his tablet. "Robert mentioned your contributions to the advisory council have been equally valuable." "It's been a productive partnership," I agreed. "The cross-industry perspective strengthens our approach here." Patrick nodded, then fixed me with a direct gaze. "Which brings me to our pending discussion. Have you made a decision about the chief sustainability officer position?" The question hung in the air between us. 3 weeks earlier, Patrick had proposed creating this new C-suite role specifically for me, a position that would expand my influence across all Helix divisions while accommodating my external advisory work. "I have," I replied. "I'd like to accept, with the structural changes we discussed." Relief flickered across his face. "Excellent. The board has already approved the framework. We can announce it at the company meeting next week." As he left, I remained in the boardroom alone, reflecting on the journey that had led to this moment. In just over 8 months, I had progressed from invisible analyst to director to C-suite executive. More importantly, I had helped transform Helix's operational culture, proving that transparency and attribution created better outcomes for everyone. Well, almost everyone. I had heard through industry channels that Lucas Blake had struggled to find equivalent employment after leaving Helix. The circumstances of his departure had followed him, limiting his options. He had eventually secured a position at a smaller firm, but at a significantly reduced level of responsibility and compensation. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a quiet acknowledgement that actions have consequences. His choices had revealed his character, just as mine had revealed mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Desmond. Lunch to celebrate the Westlake numbers? Maria and the team want to toast your last week as mere director before you ascend to the C-suite. I smiled, typing back, absolutely. The usual place in 30? As I gathered my materials, I noticed a young woman hovering hesitantly in the doorway, a recent hire from our university recruitment program. Ms. Morgan, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say, your mentorship talk last week really resonated with me. I recognized her from the seminar I'd conducted for new employees, part of the mentorship initiative I'd launched after returning from Boston. I'm glad to hear that, Emily. Was there something specific that stood out to you? She stepped further into the room, her expression earnest. The part about documenting your ideas and contributions, about not being afraid to claim your work. She paused. In my previous internship, I had an experience similar to what you described. I developed a process. Improvement that my supervisor presented as his own. The familiar story stirred both empathy and resolve. And now you know how to protect your work going forward. She nodded. Exactly. It feels empowering, like I have some control. You do, I assured her. Your ideas matter. Your voice matters. After she left, I stood by the window, looking out at the San Diego skyline, the same view I had, sketched so many times, first from my small balcony, and now from my office on the executive floor. The buildings hadn't changed, but my perspective had, in every sense. Gathering my things, I headed out to meet my team for lunch. As I passed through the open workspace, I noticed the collaborative energy, the engaged discussions, the visible recognition of individual contributions through our digital attribution board. This wasn't just a department anymore. It was a community of professionals who knew their work mattered, and their voices were heard. At the restaurant, my team had pushed together tables to accommodate everyone. They cheered playfully as I approached, a far cry from the days when I would eat lunch alone at my desk, invisible and underappreciated. To our soon-to-be chief, sustainability officer, Desmond toasted once we were all seated, who taught us that standing up for your work doesn't have to mean tearing others down, and who proved that the quietest person in the room often has the most to offer, Maria added, raising her glass. As conversation flowed around me, I thought about the morning that had changed everything, standing frozen in the doorway, watching Lucas rehearse my presentation. The hurt and betrayal I had felt then had been transformed into something constructive, something that benefited not just me, but everyone at this table and beyond. Walking back to the office after lunch, I received an email notification, the formal offer letter for the Chief Sustainability Officer position. As I read through the details, I realized it represented more than a title or compensation package. It was tangible recognition that integrity and expertise could triumph over politics and posturing. That evening, I found myself back on my balcony, sketchbook in hand, drawing the sunset over San Diego Bay. The hobby I had once kept separate from my professional identity had become integrated into my life, another expression of my authentic self. My phone rang, Claire, calling from Boston. "Did you get the offer?" she asked without preamble. "Just this afternoon," I confirmed. "It's official. Announcement next week." I knew it. Her excitement carried through the line. First female C-suite executive in Helix history, right? Second, I corrected. Jennifer from legal made it first, about 15 years ago. But first, Chief Sustainability Officer, since it's a new position. Still historic, she insisted. Are you celebrating? I looked out at the darkening sky, at the city lights beginning to twinkle across the bay. In my own way, drawing, thinking, appreciating how far we've come. We? Not just me, my team, the company. The idea that work can be recognized based on merit rather than who presents it loudest. Claire was quiet for a moment. You know what I love most about how this all turned out? You didn't just win for yourself. You changed the system that allowed someone like Lucas to thrive in the first place. Her observation crystallized something I had felt, but hadn't fully articulated. The true victory wasn't in my promotion or Lucas's downfall. It was in creating an environment where talent could be recognized. regardless of title or political skill, where good ideas could rise on their merits rather than their packaging. After we said goodbye, I remained on the balcony, watching as the last colors of sunset faded from the sky. In the growing darkness, the lights of the city shone more brightly, each one representing possibility, connection, the collective energy of thousands of lives intersecting. I thought about Emily, the young new hire who had found empowerment in learning to protect her work. About Maria, whose talents were now recognized and rewarded. About all the quiet voices still waiting to be heard in workplaces across the country. My journey had come full circle. From the analyst whose work was stolen to the executive who could ensure others' contributions were protected. From the woman who stood frozen in a doorway to the leader who opened doors for others. The path forward was clear, illuminated by the very values that had guided me through the darkest moments: integrity, truth, and the courage to stand up for both. I closed my sketchbook and went inside, ready for whatever came next. Not as the invisible worker I had once been, but as the leader I had become. A leader who understood that true power lay not in silencing others, but in amplifying the quiet voices that might otherwise go unheard. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't need to shout to be powerful. It just needs to be spoken.